Joe Budden addresses his ops clicking up.
They got the hateful Vengers, the We Hate Joe Vengers going on. It's a crew. It's a new crew. It's a new crew of Voltron that's forming, trying to get me out of here. A bunch of weak, lifeless losers.
Yes, that's right. On a recent episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe Budden decided to fire back at those who seem to be trying to take him down. Now, is Joe Budden indeed correct, or is he just being paranoid as members of his show start to take his podcast for granted? For those of you that don't know, over the weekend, there was a bunch of spaces that coincidentally had a lot of people that Joe Budden had issues with on the stage. I'm talking about people like Rory, Maul, Rocky, and Taxstone. People throw me in the loop, but I guess I'll add myself. But I would say that just, Joe Budden just has issues with a lot of people. I mean, if you were going to try to throw a space where Joe Budden didn't have issue with anyone, that would be really hard. Well, a lot of people thought that those spaces were aimed to bash Joe Budden, and one of those people who thought that was Joe Budden himself. He would go on Twitter and start subtweeting the people who were on the stage. You know, he was acting really paranoid and thought that Rory was trying to get with Flip so that he could come on the podcast or talk to him on the space. And I have to say, this looks like a lot of paranoia, if you ask me, largely because I was in those spaces and there was only but a couple of instances where Joe's name was brought up. So I think he's reaching, I think he's spiraling, and I think it's because his home isn't in order, right? He just suspended Queen's Flip for a month. He just had Ish call out and didn't even tell him that he wasn't going to come to the pod. So in order for him to feel okay, he has to start looking to the external factors. That's what he has to start doing. Joe Budden addressed Taxstone directly, saying that his assertion that Flip is only up there because he owes a favor to the people who brought him in the music industry isn't true. He even calls it stupid and says that it's a reach. But I would guess Tax meant that, you may have had to do it because there was really no option for you to say no without you feeling like it would have looked crazy to the people who brought you in the industry. Even if Manny chimes in and says, people just need to hate Joe. They don't need to talk about other members of the pod and go at them. Their issue is with Joe, and Joe could handle himself. They don't need to involve everybody who's on the show sitting on the couch. Well, I don't know, Imani, because a lot of people on the show, specifically Flip, and even you, Imani, when you first got there, y'all were trying to attach yourself to Joe's beefs in order to garner attention on the podcast. Specifically Flip, right? He was taking shots at Rory and Maul for no reason, unprompted. They never said anything about him. But he wanted to get the clicks up. He wanted to get the engagement up. So he would bring them up because that's how you get the clicks and engagement up. You bring up Rory and Maul, and that does something for the numbers. And Flip himself also addresses Tax and says he's not compromised just because he sits next to Joe Budden. Straight out cap. Anybody is compromised when they're around their boss. Y'all be around y'all boss. Y'all know y'all compromised. I guess Flip wants to make it seem like he's his own man, but Flip, you were just suspended. That means you compromised. They broke you. You were like that wild horse in the forest. Joe saw that wild horse. It was like, he would be great for my ranch. But we need to break him. So, through a series of tactics, like telling you to control yourself and telling you to chill out, he finally broke you. He suspended you. He made you realize that you need Joe Budden's network to make that money, right? You did a bunch of skits to try to make up for the losses that you thought you wouldn't get paid for. You're compromised. There's nothing wrong with being compromised. And that's just something you need to observe. Joe Budden also maintains that Tax's assertion that he disrespected Combat Jack simply isn't true, and that he never took shots at Combat Jack. But I will say, during the Rory interview, they didn't exactly speak about loudspeakers in a way that was the highest of favor. It felt like they were kind of, denigrating the work of loudspeakers. I think one day I need to do a documentary about loudspeakers. Then Flip seemingly calls out Joe Budden for being cool with me and going on the spaces, and then makes this BS narrative about how I started attacking Joe when he dissed me. No, Flip, I'm not going to allow you to create that narrative. What happened is Joe was trying to control the stop. He was telling me not to put things on YouTube. He was telling me to try to move things around. Manipulation was going on. I had to distance myself. People saying they made stop. Okay, make another stop. And I mind you, that's what Joe said on the spaces. He said, I could make Menace material hotter than Danny tomorrow. Snapped his finger and all that. It was crazy. And what happened? A few weeks later, Menace material was on the Joe Budden podcast. Now, I'm happy for my guys. I love it. But that was a strategy. That was a strategy, y'all. They were trying to clean the stop up. But the stop survived. Even after multiple attempts for them to shoot me down, try to denigrate my brand. I saw Joe and I was like, I don't need an interview. I don't need none of that. It's time to distance myself. And Flip's a manipulator. So he's trying to make it seem like I was up to something when it's you, Flip, that's been up to something the whole time. But you're losing, Flip. Joe Budden's cooking you up there. Brother, you just got suspended. And he showed you mercy. He said, I'm going to pay you while you suspended because you need it. You want it. And you didn't know that was the case, so you did all those skits. You went walk. There was great skits, by the way. I don't want to hate. Those great stuff. Especially the one where you went to the record label. You were asking for loans and stuff from Mendices. Great stuff. Great stuff. I thought it was actually good art, good storytelling. And I'm not going to allow you to try to take control of the narrative of me and Joe because, truthfully, me and Joe were never cool like that. It was just a relationship of us being on spaces. Joe was shooting at me the whole time. He likes my content. Joe watches this channel a lot, reacts to this channel a lot. I've had an impact on the podcast. Some of the changes on the podcast come directly from me. And I am aware that my channel is not big like that. I know that. But for whatever reason, every member of that podcast has interacted with me in some form or fashion. And even other members of the podcast universe. I'm talking people, Joe, Imani, Ish, Ice, Parks, Melissa Ford, Rory, Maul, Charlemagne, all interacted with me. Charlemagne's a bit different because, he likes to sub people. But I got you in the scope, Charlemagne. We got you. We gonna get you someday. But Joe closes this addressing of his ops by saying that the people that hate him now are powerless bums that have no real power, unlike his prior enemies who had actual real power. I think he's talking about the Sirius deal. Remember when he had a Sirius deal for his podcast and at the 25th hour, it was shut down by somebody? Over the weekend on the spaces, he was talking about somebody at Sirius killed his deal. And I was trying to see, who is he talking about? And I thought, is he talking about Paul Rosenberg? Remember Paul Rosenberg, manager of Eminem and Slaughterhouse and all of that stuff? Because they have Shady XM, which is a big part of Sirius. So let me know who you think might have been the person to cancel Joe's Sirius deal. We got to do the science, y'all. We got to do the damn science. All right, y'all. Let me know what you think about Joe Budden painting a narrative that everybody who does a spaces now in the same space that he's in is trying to diss him. Especially as someone on the couch every week who's talking about other people and trying to diss them or send sub shots. All right. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.